this is capturing my image correctly, and then we can start.
Little to this. Yes, perfect.
Cool, thanks.
That's actually perfect because it's got you centered and you're framed with the anon guy behind you and Captain America there.
All right. All right. Today the 19th or 18th?
18th. Oh.
I
love it.
That's good. It's the 19th.
It's the 19th. All right, today is May 19th, 2012. My name is Jerry Whiting. I own Azalea Software. I publish a website called Jet City Orange, and I work with groups like Occupy Seattle IT, the Tibetan community around the world, Elders of the Black Panther Party, and others doing the good thing. So today, I would like to do an introduction to Tor, which is an anonymizing network used by a bunch of people around the world to surf and use the internet without being monitored and preserving their privacy, their identity, in many cases protecting them from arrest, imprisonment, torture, and worse. So Tor, T-O-R, originally stood for the Onion Router, and it talks about the basic concept, and that is sort of counterintuitive to what people usually do when they interact with the net. So, as you know, the real destination of anything on the net is an IP address. It's a series of numbers. To make it easier for humans, we've associated URLs that are easier to remember and put in TV ads. But in the end, it's really a matter of searching for a destination IP address, and the internet, a packet protocol, gets you there as quickly as possible. There's a whole thing about optimizing your web experience because you don't want latency or delays. You want Netflix to stream, and you want YouTube to upload your stuff as fast as possible. The problem is that when you set this direct path, anyone watching you can trace your steps. So it's like you come to the beach and you park the car and you see a perfect place to have a blanket on the sand, and anyone watching you can follow your tracks on the sand, and all of a sudden it's no longer a secret place. But what if that beach was trafficked by a number of tourists and sunbathers and surfers, and there were lots of tracks in the sand, and the line between your car and your blanket wasn't as direct a line. In many ways, this is a loose analogy as to how Tor works. The idea is that if someone is watching you, you're trying to shake them like a tail following you in the car. So you're going to take dodges and turns and shortcuts and try and shake that tail. So what you do with Tor is use a modified version of the browser so that you have control over your path from point A to point B, and you don't aim for a straight line, the most optimized path. You rely on a group of strangers to act as your proxy and to shuffle your traffic around. So anyone following you has to follow hops that aren't intuitive and in fact are randomized among strangers. So one way to think about the Tor network, think of it as a big dark room. And there's a row of doors on the north side and a row of exits on the south side. And so you come in through the north side and these entrances. People pass you around, and you walk out into the sunlight on the other side. Now, the rules are that you're wearing multiple T-shirts, and every T-shirt you wear has a destination on it. So the meter and greeter, as you come into that darkened room, which Tor calls a bridge, looks at your first T-shirt and says, "Oh, number 572, number 572. Someone in that dark room, one of these volunteers running a Tor relay goes, "That's me." And they look at your T-shirt, you take it off, and you're revealing another address. And then that relay, that stranger, yells out the next number, and there's 3 of those people who then hand you off to one of the exits on the south end. Now, the interesting thing with having a meter and greeter and an exit on either side with 3 people playing the T-shirt game is that no one who plays this game knows any more than where it came from and where it went next. They don't see the whole chain. And so if everyone in the room playing the shuffle game plays by the rules, no one can retrace your steps from in the door out the other end. So there's a couple problems with this, but that's the general topology, and hence the term the onion router, because the t-shirt is like peeling the layers of an onion back. And so no one sees any more than that next destination. So what are the strengths and weaknesses of such a scheme? The strength is that no one watching you can retrace your steps once you enter that darkened room. You preserve a large degree of anonymity, your identity is intact, and in fact, you have some control over where you end up by using the Tor network without someone monitoring it. One of the premises is that when you rely on the friendliness and the kindness of strangers, that not all of those strangers can be trusted. So while Tor servers are run by volunteers around the world on spare machines who donate some of their internet connectivity, their bandwidth, you don't know who those people are. And in fact, many of them don't want you to know who they are. So among the participants, the bridge that you use to get in, the 3 relays in between, and the exit on the other side, you don't know who those people are. So let's assume that a certain percent of them are bad guys who you're trying to avoid, who are pretending to be, they really are Tor volunteers, they just have nefarious purposes and a hidden agenda. Still, none of those participants sees the whole path that you create between yourself and your destination. Over time, an adversary who's eavesdropping, logging, monitoring, and storing data that passes through them can do traffic analysis and timing attacks and correlations and begin to figure out and guess and intuit what's going on. But really, if you're smart, if you use Tor correctly, if you understand what it does and doesn't do for you, it provides a large degree of protection and anonymity, preserving your privacy, while either evading those who are trying to find and track you, or perhaps you're a whistleblower trying to rat out your boss, but you're at work behind a firewall. Perhaps you're a journalist and you're trying to protect your sources, or you're a diplomat in some far-flung place who doesn't trust the network that they're on, but they need to get to a given destination. So one of the problems with Tor is that Eve or Mallory, Eve the eavesdropper and Mallory the malicious, can run a Tor bridge and watch the people coming into that darkened room. What Tor does is that there is a centralized directory, and when you attempt as a client using your browser, let's say Firefox, to connect to Tor, you'll request a random Tor bridge be dealt out to you, and that's how you connect. Luck of the draw, some of those bridges may not be who you think they are. They may not be well-intentioned strangers, but they may be the bad guys. The more bridges there are, the more relays there are, the more trustworthy the Tor network is. So I always encourage people not only to use Tor to preserve their privacy and anonymity, but to run a Tor relay or bridge if they can, so that there are more trusted servers out there, diluting the ability of Eve or Mallory to monitor and track people going through. Obviously, if you're going to run a... and also to encourage people, before I forget, to encourage as many people as possible to use Tor in conjunction with Firefox or whatever app they're using. Why? Well, let's assume that people are monitoring the Tor network. The more people who use it, the larger the pool of data the NSA has to monitor, store, and analyze. If that pool, right now, if you use Tor, it's a red flag. You probably are up to something the government wants to know about, whether it's illegal or not. Because there are very few people who are using Tor. If Tor became mainstream, and there were a whole bunch of people using it, not even all the time, but maybe a fifth of the time you're going on, you're going to go through the Tor network. Well, That makes Eve and Mallory's job exponentially harder because first of all, your participation in Tor is not an indicator of suspicion or interest by the government. Because everybody's doing it. All the cool kids are doing it. And it makes finding that needle in the haystack that much harder if they have to go search through a whole mess of stuff going through the network. So to diffuse the real pearls, it's nice to have a lot of traffic going through that net. So running a relay, running a bridge. If you support what Tor as a community is doing, one way to participate and to support that effort is to donate a spare machine and a little bandwidth towards running one of these Tor servers. And the two that are most popular and the easiest to run, the easiest by far is a relay. That's one of the 3 machines in the darkened room that look at the t-shirt and pass you on to the next one. All you're doing is blindly grabbing a packet and passing it on to the next person. If you have, let's assume that in the modern world, we can put our hands on one or more XP Service Pack 3 boxes that still runs. It may not be the fastest machine in the world, it may not have the biggest hard drive, and it may be an old tower with no keyboard, mouse, or monitor. It makes no difference. If the bad boy runs, you can use it. Here's my formula for setting up a relay. Let's say Ellis and Bob have been using the Tor network, and it's really done well for them. It's protected them from Eve and Mallory, and they both decide, we need to do a little give back. We need to pay it forward. So they each grab a machine, and they sit down one Saturday with the 6-pack. It's going to take a while and configure these 2 machines they have. So Alice says, I'm going to be a bridge, and Bob says, great, I'm going to be a relay. The first steps are the same for both of them. They're going to ideally blank those machines, reformat the hard drive, reinstall Windows, stick it on their router with an Ethernet cable, and get all the service updates. At that point, you're looking at a couple hours and a couple of beers. You then want to go to torproject.org. Before you do, of course, you're going to set a restore point. But you're going to go to torproject.org and grab the Vidalia bundle. Now, if Tor is the onion router, here we are in May of 2012, and it is Vidalia season. Vidalia is the dashboard that lets you administer Tor on your machine. And the nice thing is, I've run it for OS X and Windows. I haven't done the Linux one yet, but it's a consistent UI, and it gives you a great way to tweak what you've got on your machine in one fell swoop. So you blank a machine, you get all the service updates, you put antivirus software on there, you're already behind a firewall, you set a couple of restore points so you can always come back to a clean starting point. Then you go to torproject.org and download the Vidalia bundle for your OS. You then install it, lickety-split. You'll then launch Vidalia. It will attempt to connect to the Tor network. If it doesn't, the error message is pointing in the right direction, and there's a robust community, torproject.org. I'm going to assume that after the first configuration wiggle through Vidalia, you're going to watch your machine make a connection to the Tor network. At that point, you can show a map that shows all the connections going on around you. In the Settings tab, you'll then want to... you'll want to hit that tab, and you'll want to. The default is to run Tor as a client, which is what you would do if you want to use it in conjunction with your browsing. What you want to do is share your connection and set up a relay, I want to help people hidden. I forget what the exact text is, but you can set up a bridge as well. By default, these are public bridges that people will use as doorways to get into the Tor network. You can also, if you're concerned about how much bandwidth you have, you can go to speakeasy.net, run their speed test, and then set the amount of bandwidth you are going to contribute through the Vidalia dashboard. So if you're in a situation where everyone in the household can browse, but the minute you're downloading or streaming, I should say, a movie off of Netflix, traffic gets slow for everybody in the house. Well, you have the bandwidth, but it's a limited resource. So you can throttle how much bandwidth is given over to Tor through the Vidalia dashboard. At that point, you're all set. You can always go check by, if you set up a private bridge, you can get a bridge address, which is an IP address, :port, and then a digital fingerprint. Go to your friend's house, load up Tor, and try and surf through your own bridge, just to make sure.
So, a private bridge in that case would be different from a public bridge.
Good question. So a public bridge goes into the database that the Tor network dishes out when someone in Syria or China or anywhere they're trying to duck and dodge. When they attempt to connect to Tor, the network will they will assign them a public bridge. You're in the pool, like jury duty. You can also set up and configure what's known as a private bridge that is not in the general pool, and the only way someone knows to connect to the Tor network using your private bridge is you tell them what that bridge address is. So the easiest thing to do is blank your machine, install Vidalia, configure your machine as a relay, and be one of the people shuffling traffic around. If you have a fair amount of bandwidth, your machine's always going to be on, and you really want to step to the plate, contribute as a bridge that people will use wherever they are in the world to get online through the Tor network, coming in that darkened room. Or the third one is running the exit on that south wall. So you've come in, you've been shuffled 3 times, now you're going to go from Tor back to the internet and on to your destination, hopefully haven't shaken the person who's trailing you. Now, if I was Eve or Mallory, I know that people can use private bridges and escape my attention, but there's only so many exits, and those exits dump out in the broad daylight. You know, this is a darkened room and everything's secret and hidden. Well, the minute you go through the exit and leave the Tor network and go back into the general population in the bright daylight, anyone standing there can watch you pop out that door. So running an exit, while none of this is illegal, you can run a bridge, a relay, an exit, you can use Tor, no big deal. The real risk, or one of the inherent vulnerabilities, is that anyone watching an exit can see Tor members' plural destination. Now, correlating who came in and that final destination is the traffic analysis and the hard part. That's the jigsaw puzzle. But it's the one known. I may or may not know that you're using Tor or where you went in or what, but I do know that someone went to cnn.uk.com or whatever it is, you know. I know where the Tor traffic dumps out. So running an exit, while not risky in terms of being illegal, you will be watched. Let's assume that if you're a public exit that people are dumping back into the real world, there are those who want to know where Tor traffic goes. So be forewarned. There are efforts, Chaos Computer Club in Germany and Nosebridge, I believe it's called, here in the Bay, run Tor infrastructure and accept donations to offset the cost of maintaining what they do in a very public sense. So if you're using Tor or not, if you want to support the Tor effort, you can do it with a checkbook. You don't have to necessarily contribute running a machine. You can do all of those things. But it's a great tool used by a lot of people. And I often begin by saying, you know, when we see news updates or blog posts or video or photographs from the streets in Tahrir Square or in Syria or Tibetans protesting against the Chinese or anything going on, we always cheer and say, you know, hip hip hooray. What we sometimes fail to realize is that many of those people did so under great pressure, with the threat of arrest, detention, imprisonment, torture, always hanging over their head. So while Tor may be a hip way to duck and dodge, you know, online ads and cookies and whatnot, for a lot of people it's a real life or death situation. And they've taken a great risk, and one way to support them is to support Tor.
Yes, two questions, actually, if you're ready.
I am so ready.
Okay. So why do you need, why would you need a blank computer? I mean, why not just,
You can, I make a distinction between computer safety and computer security.
Okay.
So, if you've used a machine for a year or so and retired it, the odds are there's been shareware you've tried, open source this, beta that, no OS is perfect. The way that I sleep at night is by blanking the slate and going to a known spot. Now you can say that XP Service Pack 3 with security updates, patches, and everything up till May 19th, 2012 has these known vulnerabilities, and it sucks in this way, and here's my wish list, but at least we can agree what Windows properly updated and patched looks like as of this moment in time. So I also am aware that, you know, registry crap, DLLs hanging around, it's just easier to blank the bad boy, and at least it's a known evil as opposed to a crowd of unknown evils, plural. And I'm a little OCD, and I also, and I think that in a lot of ways, the real world, real vulnerabilities and weak spots are OS, Flash, whatever vulnerabilities. It's not, you know, I think we make a lot of our own weaknesses. And so by blowing a machine out and starting from scratch, just like, as I said, you should go to torproject.org, the mothership, to get the download for Tor or Vidalia or whatever. Check the hashes against what you downloaded. Don't trust it because it was mirrored somewhere else. I'd love to spread an infected version of Tor among, you know, dissidents worldwide if I was yeah, I mean, really, you know. So just as that computer security thing, you know, I always say, who can put fingerprints on your machine? Who's touched it? So if you blank it, you at least know there's no malware, there's no viruses, there's no nothing. I'm starting from this point. It's incumbent upon me to protect that machine from there on out. But at least I know from this point on, I've got a clean slate. Because it is, I take Tor seriously.
Yeah, okay. And then second, why would you ever want to pop out? Why would you want to exit? Can you not do what you're doing?
Well,
inside?
That's a two-part answer. So
okay.
If I'm in, now I'll use a real-world example. I'm in China and I want to use Google or Facebook or other things that Beijing does not want me to do. Sometimes, in some situations, I can use Tor to evade the Great Firewall. In many cases, you can't, because one of the features of the Great Firewall is to do deep packet inspection and look for evidence that this is a request to use Tor. And they do the sweep every 10 or 15 minutes, and they dummy a load to drop your connection. So you can get on for quick bursts, but you're not going to sit there for 6 hours using Tor inside the People's Republic. But eventually, with one caveat, what Alice in Shanghai is trying to do is get to YouTube or whatever on the outside. And so no matter how you duck and dodge through Tor, you still need to end up at your final URL.
Yes. Yes. Okay.
So you can. So it's sort of like let's go from the darkened room to the New York subway system, where yes, I want to go from 125th and Lex down to the Village. Now I can jump at probably an A-train express and jump down south really fast. But you know that, and so you're going to be waiting at the station next to the restaurant to see me pop out of it. Meanwhile, he's in the tunnel with me, trying to follow me by sitting next to me reading the newspaper. BS, he's tracking me. But once I enter in Harlem, I can start switching trains in an effort to ditch him.
Okay.
I'm still going to end up popping up
I see.
in the Village to eat dinner,
Okay.
but I'm trying to dump him in the middle.
Okay.
Because I'm on my phone, or whatever, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't want him to know where I am and where I'm going.
Got it.
And, if I go into a train station, I need what was the Matrix? I need a connection.
Yeah.
Yeah. I need to jump in, I need to get into the wormhole. I am going to pop out in the Village. But if you don't know which train station I got on in Harlem, you just know that I ended up downtown. Took you a while. And if I know how long it took you to get from 125th and Lex to the Village, I can start to guess how many trains you transferred to.
Okay.
Couldn't have done that route because that's, look at the schedule. Well, there was an accident. Oh, shit, you got to go to Queens. Whatever.
Yeah.
So there's that whole shuffle. So again, if you're running an exit, people are going to be sitting across the street taking down names and license plates. I mean, really, you have to assume that. But that's okay, because Alice is still trying to go. Now, in the same note, if it's Alice, Bob, Carol, Dave, or whoever who ends up at YouTube, they just know someone ended up at YouTube. 85 of you came in. I don't know who came over here, but one of you, 85, is guilty going to YouTube. But if there were 8,500 or 85,000 laying the finger on any one person, which is why the more people who use Tor, the more secure Tor is for everyone. The more people who use Tor, which is like this great Mahayana kind of thing. It's like you get back more than you give. I mean, if you're running a Tor relay, if you're using Tor, because if you watch CNN and you support what you see leaked out of a repressive area, and you start using Tor, it raises the amount of traffic and makes traffic analysis harder and protects that person who inspired you to use Tor when you watch that news report. It's this is not metaphysical, this is just pure freaking math. So if you really support people fighting net censorship, use Tor for everyday surfing. It makes the job that much harder to track people who really have something to protect. It may be a luxury for us or the PC thing to do, or all the kids in the 206 are doing it, whatever, but for a lot of people, increased Tor traffic is very important.
So speaking of the math,
Yes.
you say you go through 3 hops inside the dark room, right?
Yes.
Any reason why it's 3, not 4, not 5?
So there's some talk about the architecture that I barely understand what I'm trying to read. So because by nature, the shuffle of packets within the Tor network adds to latency, one of the complaints is performance. I would use it, but it's so freaking slow.
Mm-hmm.
So I was using it the other day on my very fast connection at home, and it was like I turned my I reverted to my ISP contract 2 years ago. I mean, it was noticeable, but I'm spoiled. Could I stream? Yeah, I mean, to the right sites, but I'm trying to get in the habit because I love Chrome, and Firefox is more secure. Chrome is just blazingly fast, but it's sort of like free climbing. There's no pro. There's no pro. You're chalking up and doing the thing. But I need to change that habit. I need to use Tor more because I too need to contribute to that diffusion of signal through it so that it's harder to pluck stuff out. And it's the right thing to do sometimes.
Second question.
Yes.
We're talking about exit points and being watched. Here's the idea that pops into my head. Say I'm running an exit point.
Mm-hmm.
On that box that I'm running an exit point, I also have a VPN, an encrypted VPN connection, like Tunneler.
Right.
If that exit traffic comes out through that VPN tunneler, it becomes even harder to keep an eye on. Is that right, or am I missing something there?
I bookmarked a dev note or something on the Tor site about the combination of VPNs and Tor. I'd love to share that link with you. I too have thought of that, but in talking with people and going away and thinking about what I've just heard, Tor out of the box is mature technology. The original paper, I think, was in 2004. It's been around for a long time. A lot of eyes have been on it. A lot of smart people have looked at it. While there's room for growth, I think the underlying structure for now is beyond just good enough, that it really does work. What I'd like to see is more people bringing resources to bear on the whole Tor ecosystem so that it's running on bigger boxes with faster pipes in more places. And if you look at the map through Vidalia, you'll see that there are Tor-rich and Tor-poor regions of the world. It'd be nice if that map lit up more because there were more than 27 or 2,800 relays out there. I'd love to see, there's talk about what the theoretical max build out for this current architecture is. It's measured in the thousands. So let's double, triple, quadruple the number of Tor servers out there first. I think it's really doable, especially sitting here in Seattle, high-tech capital of the Northwest, big fat pipes, lots of backbone exposed here between Weston and Fisher Plaza, down south in Tukwila. We all know where it is. Let's start plugging Tor bridges and relays, and yes, exits all over the 206, 425, 360, 253. I throw the gauntlet down to the sisters and brothers in Puget Sound, up and down I-5. Let's light it up. Let's do it here. There are lots of good boxes sitting in closets. We've got great fiber. And, if we really are PC, put our servers where our politics are. It's rock and roll.
When we're talking about bandwidth, do you have a recommendation for bandwidth levels?
No. I've been talking with people around the country who have what they consider broadband at home. I had them go to speakeasy.net and run the speed test. And I've been surprised. Stuff is all over the map. And I know in my situation, I have Comcast Business Class at home. In talking with the techs, and including the person who installed it, and I watched the pipe pretty carefully, I get way more than I'm paying for. So I know that I have the map of fiber in Seattle, and I know that West Seattle stuff starts often in Fauntleroy and moves north through West Seattle, and there's great fiber. There aren't many people using the Comcast business pipes in my neighborhood. I'm often the first to call in with a network outage, rare as they are. But, it doesn't take a lot of bandwidth. You can throttle it to whatever you're comfortable contributing. You'd be surprised. It's nice to have a, multi-core machine. A gig of memory or more is always nice. One rule of thumb is it's better to have fewer fast, high-quality machines than a lot of little ones. I also think of a distributed model where missiles on rail cars. Wouldn't it be nice if there were lots of these turning on and off, and you were changing the IP address because you were moving around, but really, in the end, there's nothing you have to hide as long as it doesn't violate the terms of service. If you're working with an ISP, tell them what you're going to do so they don't accuse you of being a spammer or worse. But really, it's a one-time setup. It's pretty straightforward. And once you do, all you're responsible for, like any machine, is keeping up with OS patches and running antivirus software. But as long as you can run, you've got that spare machine that you use to stream iTunes and Netflix already, or your whatever you've got going on. If you can run one of those, you can run a Tor box. It ain't that hard.
And this can easily be done if you're the kind of person that likes to set up VMs at home. You can easily set up a VM.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Now, if you take that ThinkPad in the closet, put Ubuntu on it, it's a totally different game. The reason I talk about XP Service Pack 3, that's on a lot of machines sitting in people's closets. Oh, it still works. I wouldn't get anything on Craigslist. It'd be too much hassle. I don't want to throw it away, but, there's really no money in it. But it still works, and when, well, fine. Bring it out, plug it in. The one thing I do strongly recommend, if you're running a relay bridge or exit, wire it into your router. Do not use Wi-Fi between the box and the outside world. DUM.
Mm-hmm.
Done. But yeah, jack it into your router. If updates come out of Redmond on Tuesday night, open a second beer. It only takes 5 minutes, but really, it's really no big deal. Makes a big difference. I would love to see that 2800 go to 6,000 people playing the Tor game, and I'd love to see a lot of that increase come out of Greater Seattle. And we can do it too. That's the fun part. It's totally doable.
Yeah, I think I have a project for the week.
Cool. Any other questions? I'm not the world's greatest, but, I find the Tor community to be pretty open. Responses come back, may take a week or so. It's all volunteer run. And Electronic Frontier Foundation, who at one point was the guardian of Tor, is also still very involved with Tor as an effort. So, yeah.
One thing, because we weren't touching on it, but Tor itself does not do any kind of encryption. So if you're doing things like you want to have secure email, you want to, do certain things, make sure you're also staying up on encryption and other forms of security. Because it's just an anonymizer. It doesn't encrypt any traffic.
Well, the other interesting thing, too, is we mentioned about popping out of the Tor network. Once you are in the Tor ecosystem, there are things called hidden services. So the .onion virtual TLD, you can actually run private anonymous services within the Tor universe once you're playing the game. So I don't run any. I understand what they are. I find it fascinating. I don't have any reason to, but once you start to surf using Tor, run a relay for a while, start getting comfortable with the whole mindset, look at the hidden services, which brings an issue of ethics and morality into discussion. Oh, if you're using Tor, it's because you're a bad guy and you've got something to hide. You're a criminal, you're a terrorist, you're a pornographer, what have you. Here's my take. Tor is a tool. A hammer can be used to build an outhouse and raise the health of a community, or it can be used to build an Auschwitz. The hammer is a value-free tool. Hammer didn't stop dysentery and E. coli. Hammer didn't massacre people. The hammer is just a tool. It's the intention we bring to any tool or situation that's important. So yes, there are bad guys who use Tor. There are alternatives to Tor that the bad guys also use. My experience has been way more good is done using a Tor network than evil. And you can't stop people from using Tor, and any more than you can convince some people to be non-evil on alternate Tuesdays. I mean, just the nature of the world. So while some Tor traffic is stuff I don't agree with, support, believe in, or think should even exist, that's really none of my business. Because the large volume of Tor traffic is legit and is not criminal, terrorist, security threat, etc., etc., etc. It's just people who want to be anonymous. I mean, you know, dude.
They are legion.
Oh, yeah. Yes, we are. Yeah. So, yeah, there's stuff that goes on the Tor that, sucks.
Yeah.
But there's stuff on public TV. There's stuff on,
The whole concept of privacy, not just on the internet, since the very foundation, the concept of privacy means that some people may abuse that.
Right.
But we still recognize that privacy is a much greater good overall. And that's doesn't change with Tor, doesn't change with the internet.
Yeah. And, Tor, again, is not used by any one group or any one part of the world. There are, I'm sure, people in governments, plural, around the world who depend upon Tor as one of the tools in their bag of tricks. Are some people using it as a dark net to do bad stuff? Yes, they are. But, that's the nature of the world. But Tor in and of itself, just like the hammer, is a value-free tool. Cool.
Wonderful, thank you.
Oh, thank you.